You know, when I was 50, I wrote a book about parenting to give to my children as a gift because they had taught me so much. And so now I'm going to be reading that book to you. And I know it's not as exciting as when I'm just making things up, but I need to read you each chapter. So we're going to start now. And this book is called The Heart of Parenting. And the first chapter is called The Heart of Parenting. So let me get calm and still, and we'll start. You know, most of what we've been taught about parenting and about loving in general is more about what makes our culture comfortable rather than what actually nurtures a joyous, creative child. When we're parenting from a place of true integrity, we have so much energy and excitement and tenderness to spare. Our children perceive us as their trusted advocates. But when we're parenting to please others, or some nameless they, we are so often exhausted and irritable and judgmental and overwhelmed. And soon our children become wary and resistant and stubborn. Kenneth Patchen was right when he observed that people are cruel when their lives are meaningless. So in order to avoid being cruel to our children and to our own inner child, we must allow our lives to have true and deep meaning. We must gather our courage and take the risk of really making a difference in the lives of those we love. What makes that difference in a family is actually being in love with our mates and our children. Notice that I said in love, and I meant that because children are not asking for some removed, safe, germ-free theoretical loving. What is really required to raise a happy child is excitement and aliveness. That feeling of wanting and needing to be in the presence of that person. And those are behaviors that we associate with being in love. When I ask you if you love your children, you will probably smile indulgently and say, yes, of course I do. But if I ask you if you are in love with your children, you may begin to squirm with discomfort. Our lukewarm culture does not encourage the passion of loving a child beyond reason or logic. And yet that is exactly what your children are craving. They're even demanding, and probably they're still waiting for it. Because these precious creatures will not be quickened until you call them into life with the magnetic force of your own loving. I understand the personal and cultural reasons for keeping a healthy distance from your children. Pure and simple, we stay away from them to protect them. Our puritanical training has been extremely thorough. If you don't get near them or love them too much, you won't hurt them or pass on your own damage. In fact, just the opposite is true. Emotional distance requires our children to push harder, more desperately, and less appropriately for connection. Children who can't get nourishment and attention in any other way will put up with almost any form of attention, no matter how painful, how degrading or abusive, simply because they're desperate. And conversely, children who have full access to their parents are much more discerning and confident about their rights and their needs. Isn't it ironic that our best intentions to protect our children from ourselves have just the opposite results? This is because these so-called best intentions come not from the natural world, but from a culture badly out of balance. And there's also a more subtle form of protecting our children from ourselves, which involves going through the motions of parenting but not really connecting. I can't tell you how many families I've witnessed where the parents say all the right words, and in fact they're exhausted by spending almost all day, every day, trying to be present for their children. And they follow all the prescribed rules of parenting, but still the children act as if they're starving. Sadly, because they are starving, they are wasting away an emaciation of the spirit. And so the most important thing to remember as parents is that it's not what we do, but the attitude we do it with that makes the difference. Empty actions only confuse your children and make them feel crazy and resentful. So if you did not experience deep, unconditional loving when you were young, you might find yourself loving with less depth than you or your child would need. Receiving and giving shallow love, it's kind of like receiving and giving rubber checks. No one gets nourished for long, and there's a great disappointment and a sense of betrayal that the gift wasn't authentic. The good news is that it is possible to become a source of abundant loving in spite of our own childhood emotional poverty. And you'll get better at it with practice. Begin each day with the prayer, "Teach me to love." It's a spiritual path to learn to parent authentically, straight from your vulnerable heart. And I can only say that if you didn't get that when you were young, you need it now as much as your child needs to receive it. You need to give it. Thank you.